guys, it's Emily and Milo back there cleaning herself, being super cool for the video. Today I'm here to bring you another recent reads video. As always, I got 3 books to talk about, so let's just get right into it. First book that I finished recently was Jane Eyre by Charlotte Brontë, and this was my Victober read for the month. I always try to read at least one Victorian novel in October for Victober. I talked about this a lot, like 2 videos ago, so I'm going to try to keep it short this time. This is about Jane Eyre, who is an orphan, and she is raised by an aunt that really doesn't like her, and the aunt sends her to boarding school, and then from the boarding school she goes to be a governess at a country house called Thornfield, and the master of Thornfield is Mr. Rochester, and she and Mr. Rochester fall in love, and things just go from there. And this was really interesting. We followed, of course, Jane from when she's a very young girl all the way up to like mid-20s, and so it's a big chunk of her life, and we see her character development and her progression. At the beginning of the book, she's quite angry because of the poor treatment of her aunt, and we just see how she sort of grows and becomes her own woman and learns more about herself. We see her relationship with Mr. Rochester, and we learn about Mr. Rochester's past, including his famous wife in the attic, which most people know about. If you don't know about it, sorry, that's a spoiler, but like most people know that's the main plot point of Jane Eyre that people know. But I was actually pleasantly surprised because that's not like the main focus of this book at all. It's really truly about Jane's character progression in her life and her empowerment as a woman, and the way she adapts to the challenges that come her way, and the way that she sticks to her beliefs no matter what. And I actually was very pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed this. I had read this like once a long time ago, and actually after reading this, I'm not 100% sure that I actually finished it that last time. The opening, like the beginning of the book, was very familiar to me, but then the ending wasn't. So it makes me wonder if I like stopped halfway through the first time. But anyway, I have now officially read the entirety of Jane Eyre for sure, and I really liked it. And I started this on audio, but then I kept like stopping it to look stuff up, so I quit doing the audio and started doing the Kindle instead, and that worked out really well because I could just tap on the stuff I didn't know and look it up on the internet that way. But yeah, really great book, and I really enjoyed it. And I actually listened to Kate Howe's discussion video about Jane Eyre from last October, and it was really great, and I got some great insights out of listening to that as well. I then read Unmentionable, The Victorian Lady's Guide to Sex, Marriage, and Manners by Therese Oneill. And this is another one that I talked about like 2 videos ago, and I talked about way too much, so I'm going to try to keep it short. So this is literally what it talks about. It is a guide to how your life would have been if you were an upper class Victorian lady in the Victorian period. It talks about makeup, it talks about dressing, it talks about courtship, it talks about sex, it talks about preventing birth, preventing pregnancy. It talks about abortion. It talks about literally everything that a Victorian lady would have been concerned about in the Victorian era. And it does so through very funny commentary by Therese Oneill, but then also there's like snippets of various Victorian newspapers and various Victorian medical journals and various Victorian entities and like famous people, people that were considered to be experts in their field in the Victorian era. Of course, none of them were experts because the medical knowledge was very lacking back then, but that's how it shows. It makes its case, and it shows what was important to Victorian society when it came to women's health and women's manners and just women's positions in society. So I really enjoyed this. Each chapter is divided up by a subject, and so that one chapter covers one subject at a time. And there's also pictures, and the pictures have like funny captions, and it's just a really interesting book. I definitely recommend it. I was really impressed actually because I read this partially while I was reading Jane Eyre, and it was amazing how like once I started reading this, I was like, wow, Jane Eyre, like obviously they're not talking about the nitty gritty of Victorian life, you know, they are talking about the romanticized ideal version, and you know in the introduction. Therese Oneill mentions that. She's like, a lot of people like the Victorian era because they like, you know, romantic or not rom-coms, but romantic movies set in that area. And she's like, honey, it wasn't anything like that. And so yeah, there was a lot of funny sentences like that. And I definitely really recommend this. I know a lot of people have already read this. I think Olive from A Book Olive has read it, and I know Doris has read it, and it's gone around BookTube before. But if you somehow missed it, I definitely recommend it for next October because I think it would add a lot to your future reading of Victorian novels, knowing a little bit more about the actual day-to-day reality of Victorian life. The third book I haven't talked about yet, so I can talk about it at length, and that is The Immortalists by Chloe Benjamin. This is another book that I've been meaning to read in the fall for a long time, or not a long time, but since it came out, because this cover just screams fall to me. Like, it's obviously an autumn vibe, and I'm glad I finally read it because every autumn I'm like, this is the year, and this was the year. So this is about four siblings, the Gold siblings, and one day in 1969, they go to a fortune teller and they hear their fortune read, and the fortune teller tells each of them the day they are going to die. She tells them month, day, and year. And so they come out, and so that's the prologue. And the rest of the book is showing their lives after that event. And there's four parts, one for each sibling. And so we start with the sibling that dies the earliest, and we go all the way into the sibling that dies the latest. And so when they come out, they don't tell each other what day they're going to die, but they tell each other like the age range. So like one of them is going to die really young, and then one of them tells everybody that they're going to die when they're 88. And so it's about this, the overall theme and the overall message is talking about how much control over your fate do you have. Like does knowing the date of your death guarantee you're actually going to die on that day, or does knowing it make you choose different things in life as a result, which then of course contributes to your death date. So the four siblings are all very different people. There's Simon, there's there's Simon, Clara, Daniel, and Vera. And so these are the four, and so we see each of them. I don't want to tell you who's who because I feel like it might spoil it, but one of them is a gay person that moves to San Francisco, and we see 1980s San Francisco, and we see a little bit about the AIDS crisis. One of them is a magician, and so we see their determination to become a magician, and they're traveling around with their spouse and their kid. And then one of them is a medical doctor, and we see they have been let go from their job, and we see what happens with that. And then one of them is a scientist, and they are working with primates, and so we see what happens with that. And it was just a really interesting book. So going into this, I had always felt like this was going to be an Emily book just because of the premise and the fact that it's historical fiction. It starts again in 1969 and it goes all the way into the early 2000s. So it's like covering a huge span of time. It's set in different locations, so we get to see historical views of many different places. So on the cover, on the tin, it sounded like an Emily book. And I enjoyed it to a point. It's a very quick read. I read it in like 3 days, and 2 of those days were work days, so like that's a big deal for me. But the thing that I didn't like about it is like it got really weird. Like the first sibling story was good. I enjoyed it. The second sibling story was a little weird. The third sibling got weirder than that, and then the fourth story was just crazy weird. So I don't know, and I get that like knowing what day you are gonna die would like definitely mess up your mindset, but it just seems so crazy what all of the siblings did except the first sibling. That sibling, what they were doing made sense, but the rest of them, it was just bizarre. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I enjoyed this, but it was a weird book. I'm just going to say that straight out. It was a weird book. But yeah, overall, I'm glad I read it because, like, it was, like I said, it was a book that I'd been seriously wanting to read because I thought it was going to be amazing for several years. But yeah, this was okay. I would recommend it, but it wasn't as amazing as I thought it was going to be. Currently, I'm reading We Ride Upon Six by Quan, and I'm not going to say anything about this because I'll tell you about it in my next video. And also, I just started it, so I don't know much about it. But it's going really well, and it's another book that seems kind of spooky and like a fall vibe. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it so far. It's about a girls' hockey team in Danvers, Massachusetts in 1989, and it's some weird witchy stuff is going on, and that's all I know for right now. But overall, really enjoying it so far, and I'll be glad to talk to you about it in the next video. So that's all I've been reading lately. I hope everybody else has been reading some great books, and you're keeping safe and healthy, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye! And bye from that girl who's still cleaning herself and being weird. You want to say bye? No, she wants to lick her tail. Okay, bye!